I went out partying one night.
My son was killed by a drunk driver.
I got in my truck and I drove afterwards.
I'm a first-degree murderer.
He was murdered.
I watched him bleed to
I
death.
killed an innocent man.
I planned, I plotted,
And I killed my best
I
friend.
murdered my best friend.
He was killed by his best friend.
The wrong man died that day.
Elijah was my youngest, my only son.
He was one of a kind.
He was a lot different than I am. I'm very black and white, and he was kind of full of color and life.
We were really close friends, and I just remember thinking I was honored to be his friend.
Jimmy was my cousin. He and I were best friends all through high school.
Jimmy was a great man. I say that because he was always very unselfish and very giving. He just wanted to make sure that other people were able to get by and be happy.
Gary was awesome. He was amazing. Everybody who knew him loved him. He was my best friend.
Everyone that I talked to that knew him said that he was one of the best guys they'd ever met.
I didn't deal well with just one substance. I always preferred to have a couple in my system at one time. So the night of the wreck, I remember having a beer and having a cigarette. And then that's the end of it. I don't remember anything else.
I got a call one morning about 5 o'clock. I'm getting ready for work, and it was the police department.
My brother had been a passenger in a vehicle. The driver had been intoxicated, and he had been in a significant accident.
All I could think of going all the way to the hospital was, Elijah, hang on, just hang on, wait, I'm coming.
One of them informed me that I totaled my truck and that my friend was in ICU and he probably wasn't going to make it. And I didn't even know which friend they were talking about.
He died that day, 25 years old. I never got to say goodbye.
I killed him. I killed Elijah.
The way I was leading up to the crash, I was totally selfish about myself and dependent upon pain pills. It got to the point where I couldn't get out of bed in the morning unless I had pain pills there ready to take. So I'm on my way home, and I'm a quarter of a mile from the house fixing to take a left. And that's where the wreck happened. I turned in front of Gary, and it killed him.
It was 1:30 when my cell phone rang, and the first words out of her mouth was, Gary's dead. I just couldn't believe it. It was a nightmare. It was a nightmare.
I didn't see him. I'll never really understand why. I know it had to do with the prescription meds that was in my system, but I'll never understand why I still didn't see him, because everything was flat and straight. I should have seen him.
One night on August 14th, 1995, I ended up stabbing Jimmy to death in his garage of his home. I remember being at the police station the day that they found Jimmy's body and watching Peggy walk in. And at one point, Peggy had said, "Who did this?" And she walked towards me and I held her. And I was hugging Peggy. I remember holding her and knowing that I was the one who did it. But I was offering comfort to her. And what a betrayal this really was. And how painful the realization was going to be if they ever found out. The next day, they arrested me for the murder of James Steele.
The court experience was very frustrating.
It was a long, drawn-out process that keeps you stuck. They always seem to forget who Elijah was. It's all about the sentencing of the offender. I wanted to make sure that they didn't forget that it's my son who was killed.
You have no voice at all. The offender has more of a voice than you do, and it is a lifelong struggle after that to try to get any of it back.
The Colorado Department of Corrections established the Victim Offender Dialogue Program after legislation was passed in 2011 regarding restorative justice programs.
I heard about the restorative justice program. Patty, Elijah's mom, wanted to talk to me.
I wanted him to know how he had changed my life. I wanted him to understand, to see, to look into my eyes, and to know the pain that he had caused me by his decision and by killing my son.
We definitely wanted to make sure he was held accountable for what he had done, make sure that he was remorseful for what he had done. We wanted to be able to get that heavy load off of our shoulders. And we also wanted to get some of that burden off of him because he's carrying a very heavy load too.
From the start, I wanted to do it. I was very, very eager to do what I could to ease what the family was going through.
The greatest benefit to the victims and survivors in this program are they finally have an opportunity to have questions answered that only the offender can answer. They have very few opportunities in the criminal justice system to be heard, and this is an opportunity for them to directly speak to the offender in the crime.
I needed to know about my son's death, how it happened, why it happened, so I didn't have to imagine in my mind anymore how my son died. Todd was the only one that could answer those questions for me.
When we went into the dialogue, we were able to basically orchestrate it, to say how we wanted it to run.
You got control. And you were able to say, I want it to go like this. And what do you think about this? And can it happen like this? And it did.
When I walked into the room for the dialogue, I had a lot of fear.
I was scared.
Becky and I were very nervous. I wasn't even sure I was going to be able to do it that morning. You know, sitting across the table, I had seen him in videos and stuff, but actually sitting across the table, I knew it was going to be really hard.
And then when I saw him, I think I was a little angry at first.
As soon as I walked into the room and I saw Patty and Jess, and they told me that they were nervous, then it kind of settled me down a little bit, and we jumped right into it.
He just didn't look like the monster that I had seen for 19 years in his photograph. This was a different person.
He was so broken when he walked in that room. And it was so clear that he was hurting as much as I was.
The surprise of the offender is oftentimes how gracious the victims are. They expect them to be angry and to yell and scream at them, and I've never seen that happen.
During the meeting, I never once seen hatred. I never once seen anything like that.
Being able to look into someone's eyes and you can see the depth of the pain that you knew that you inflicted.
And that just, it opened my eyes even more to the fact that I took a lot from his family.
I didn't understand the depth of the pain that I had caused. But that at that point, I didn't even want to hurt anybody else's feelings.
He absolutely took responsibility for what he did, and he was eager to say that to us.
They weren't there to judge me. They were there to see that I was totally remorseful. I think they really needed to see that.
The dialogue shifted when Andy began to talk about my brother. He talked about him in a way that I knew that he loved him. He shared his memories of my brother, and I don't know, in that moment, I kind of couldn't hate him anymore.
The emotion that he showed, I wasn't counting on that.
It just started flowing. It was like a conversation that it just started flowing. She didn't even need to ask us questions anymore because we just talked back and forth.
The victims have a huge sense of a weight being lifted off of them. They have answers to so many questions they've thought about for years, maybe. And the offenders, who are so eager to do what they can to help, feel so much better that they've been able to express that directly to the person or survivor who has been caused harm by them.
When we went in, we did a deep breath because we were so nervous. When we went out, we were able to actually take a breath, and it felt so good. And we were able to just let it out, and it was awesome.
A sense of peace. We walked in there without it, and you walk out with a sense of, okay, I finally know. I heard his remorse. I heard him take accountability, and it is very peaceful.
Such a weight was lifted off my shoulders that I actually went straight to the cemetery. And I was able to actually visit with him without falling apart.
I think what I really got out of it was a sense of empathy. And it wasn't just empathy from me to them, it was that they were actually thinking about how I felt. And that was amazing to me.
It brought healing to both of us. When I walked out of the room, I knew that I had experienced something miraculous, that it was awesome. It was life-changing. I was never going to be the same again because I was able to put myself in Peggy's shoes. And I had never done that on my own.
I've seen lives really transformed. People seem different after the dialogue. They seem lighter, they seem more positive, and they seem more focused on moving forward from the stage of where they were at before the dialogue happened.
I believe that in our situation, Andy and us, we needed to go through this to move forward.
I don't believe Andy will ever drink and drive again. And that was a very important thing for me to be able to hear from him myself and actually believe.
I think we'll be safer. I think we'll be able to supervise him outside of the community, and I think that he'll be able to be released into the community because he was accountable to his victims.
With just the handful of cases we've been able to facilitate dialogues for, we're just scratching the surface on the benefits that can come from it. It's truly remarkable. My hope is that we can continue, sustain, and expand this program for everybody who wants and needs it.
As a victim, I needed to have an opportunity to speak. I needed to have an opportunity to go before Andy. And this program allowed me to have that.
It helped us so much, and I know it helped him.
That experience was very transformative for me.
I think it's life-changing.
I can't believe that in 6 hours, so much transformation could happen for all of us. It was just a thing of beauty.
I look at days different now when I wake up. It's kind of a brighter world.